Hi, it's Stephanie Pruitt. I am coming to you at day 7 of 30 by 30 by 30. I'm just outside of the Frisk Center where I've gone through the 30 Americans exhibit. I'm writing 30 poems in 30 days in relation to works in the 30 Americans exhibit. Today I drafted a poem in relation to Hank Willis Thomas's Basketball and Chain. Hank Willis Thomas was born in Plainfield, New Jersey, I'm reading out of my notebook, that's what I'm looking off, but born in Plainfield, New Jersey, 1976. He now lives in New York and San Francisco and has a series of works very interested in branding and athletics and black masculinity and black imagery in contemporary culture. And this is a really exciting piece for me to write about. I've seen it in a couple of different contexts in books. I've heard Hank Willis's mother, Deborah Willis, speak about his work along with other noted photographers. I heard Hank Willis Thomas speak here at the Frisk Center a few weeks ago. So this is an artist and a work that I've seen in a few different contexts, and I was really curious about how I would write in relation to this piece. With many of the works, I've consciously tried not to do a great deal of research or interaction before I write on them. I want to really capture the process of visiting the gallery, kind of meeting the work for the first time and thinking very intently in the moment and doing research in the moment. That's not typically my process. I'm very research driven. I will gather all of the books, all of the resources, ideas I can find before I draft a poem. So this is a challenge for me. Today was kind of reverting back to something that was a little more comfortable in my typical way of writing, but challenging in different ways. So let me read the draft of the poem and then I'll talk about the process. First, as I introduce the work, this is a large digital chromogenic print. So it's a photograph of presumably a black man. You can't see his whole body or his face, but definitely looks like a male, wearing some branded Nike tennis shoes, and he's leaping or jumping, but he has a basketball that is chained to his ankle, tethering him, or possibly tethering him. So let me read the draft of the poem. Hosed down firmly, Jim Crowed and Willie lynched, the people stand. Faith stripped, religion used as power's pawn, the people praise. Outlawed, under-resourced and overtaxed, the people learn. Branded, chained to external expectations, the people fly. But what when flight will not suffice? All right, so reading that, I've already decided to make a couple of changes. I'm going to change external to outside for outside expectations. And I'm thinking the title might be When Flight Is Not Enough. We'll see. I'll do a few revisions there. But part of what I was thinking about with this draft is the idea of exceptionalism and how we can see, a wide swath of people who are struggling in certain areas. But if we can find one or two who seem to be doing well, then they're the exceptional ones that should be, kind of the banner holders for everyone. I think exceptionalism can work for and against a people. I think that's a really kind of interesting thing to think through. And of course, the idea of branding with name brands and kind of commercial culture, but also branding as a practice that was done during slavery to identify property. So all of that is going on in the image and in the poem, and I'm definitely considering all of that. But another thing that's coming up to me, I had a few emails and questions about the draft of the poem I made in the video I made yesterday, and an essay that I mentioned. The essay, and I couldn't remember the exact name, so I have that for you today. The essay is The Logic of Stupid Poor People. So this is a personal essay that's circulating around the internet. I didn't write it. I've read it about 20 times thinking about it. The essay, The Logic of Stupid Poor People, is talking about the potential of, class jumping in a way by having name brand or visibly expensive items that a lot of people would say are stupid to buy. And so I'm even thinking of tennis shoes and the tennis shoes that are in this image. a status symbol in some circles, maybe outside of what we would think is a person's budget. It's like, why do you pay $100 or $200 for tennis shoes? What does that do for you? And I think there are a lot of, questions and answers that we could kind of debate in that area. For an athlete, having certain shoes will empower you, and they give you kind of the tools you need to perform. In other circles, it is simply a status symbol. But can we say status symbols are just simple, kind of hollow or shallow things? I don't know. I think this is really an amazing conversation to have. And as I was drafting this poem, I was thinking a lot about exceptionalism and what takes someone from poor to good, from good to great. And there are all kinds of books and, self-help ideologies that talk about this. But I guess one thing that artwork can help us to do is kind of crystallize a moment or an image or an idea in a way that we can engage with it. With Hank Willis Thomas's photograph, one question that I ask myself is, what happens next? The photograph has a person jumping in the air, and you have to ask yourself, in the next moment, do they fall back down? Do they fall back down because they're tethered by the chain in the basketball, or do they exhale beyond this ball and chain and, continue to fly outside of the frame of the image we see? I think that's a good question anytime you're engaging with literature or art. What happens next? Why? How do we know this? What in the composition tells us this? What in kind of the real world examples that we see can tell us what might happen next? I often ask my students when we're reading a poem or maybe a short story or a novel, what do you imagine the characters are going to do after the book has ended, after the poem has ended? And they look at me like, oh, Professor Pruitt, I don't even get the question. Well, part of it is an exercise in building strong characters and characterization and what writers are doing when they create great characters. I once heard Walter Mosley speak about developing his characters, and he was saying that he knew them so well that even though it wasn't an element of the novels he'd written, he could grocery shop for his characters. He could presumably go in the store and know which brand of toothpaste his characters would buy because he knows them that well. Well, when we're reading or when we're looking at a piece of artwork, how do we know what we know about the characters or about the narrative we're seeing? Is it based off of the composition in front of our eyes, or is it based off of our world experiences, kind of our expectations of what they're doing, or even the tone that we see in the work? With the work I was writing on today, Basketball and Chain, is this a victorious, triumphant work? The fact that the person is jumping in spite of having this ball chained to them? Or is it more of a work that's talking about the problems and the challenges and issues of not being able to jump and fly because of this ball and chain? I think context and perspective weigh heavily on your interpretation of the tone of the work. So my eyes are starting to water because it's windy and it's cold out here. But I don't know, I'm really curious about how these dynamics operate in the way that we read literary texts and visual texts. All right, I'm going to check in with you again tomorrow. Can you see? Here we go. You see the number 2, and you'll look out for the number 3 on the sticker tomorrow. Make sure you're subscribing to the YouTube channel. You'll get notifications of all of the videos, and we can stay in touch with one another that way. And if you come to see the works at the Frisk Center, tell them you heard about it from 30 by 30 by 30. All right, talk to you soon.